More than 30 years have passed since I lived as a brother in the Novitiate. Returning here, I had no idea what the walls of the monastery would reveal. There were stories, rumors of arson, theft, occult activities, and young people experimenting with drugs and sex in the Abbey. Some even say it's haunted. But one story proved true, the one about the Indian uprising that took place within these cloisters. Before there was big trouble here, Jenny Peters built a stately mansion on Wisconsin's Red River near the Menominee Indian Reservation in the 1930s. It was to be a home for her ailing daughter, but she died before it was completed. This was the first indication this property was to gain a reputation for disappointment and unfulfilled dreams. Ms. Peters donated the property to the Alexian Brothers, a Catholic order known for their work in health care. The Alexians expanded the original mansion into a larger facility to train new brothers called novices. Fresh out of high school in Texas, I joined them in this once pristine building known as the Novitiate. The remote location insulated us from distraction, the bitter cold, and even our neighbors. We were aware the Menominee tribe and reservation were nearby, but we knew nothing about their circumstances and history. Surely they wondered about what went on behind our closed doors. The Indians were less than a mile away, but we were worlds apart. Long before the Catholic Brothers arrived, the Menominee had been a success story. That is, until the federal government terminated their tribal status to assimilate them into modern America. Termination was a disaster and resulted in poverty, internal strife, and loss of their native identity.
I grew up thinking that we weren't real Indians anymore because we were terminated.
While Menominee men were all fighting in Vietnam, the predominantly female leadership campaigned to restore tribal status. Progress was slow, and there was disagreement on how to proceed.
We said, look, we need to go back to Congress and rectify this so that if we're talking about restoration to our status at the time of termination, then let's have real restoration. Restore us to the tribe we were, to the government we were, to the land base we were.
They were divided. In opposition to the Restoration Committee was the Warrior Society, comprised mostly of returning vets and other young men left out of the political process. Former warrior and current tribal chairman, a.k.a. recalls.
A group of young men and women got together and said, we need to do something to focus national attention on our plight.
Meanwhile, change had taken place at the Novitiate as well. Orders from the Vatican caused the Alexians to discontinue training novices as they had for centuries. I too was long gone. The monastic way of life was not for me. The monastery was closed and left in the hands of a caretaker until a suitable buyer could be found. Armed with an old treaty, the Menominee warriors, along with members of the American Indian movement, saw an opportunity. Brother Morris Wilson of the Alexians explains.
They wanted the novitiate back because they understood that the law said if the religious community leaves after serving the Indians, that land reverts back to the Indian tribe.
We determined that we were going to go into the Alexian Brothers Novitiate, and we were going to hold that until Congress, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, government officials would reconsider doing and undoing what the Restoration Act done.
Celebrating a new year with family and friends, Joe Plonka, the caretaker, had no idea what was about to happen that evening.
And so on eve of January 1st, 1975, we got in our vehicles, we rounded up the people that were willing to participate, and I think there was about 30 of us. Eddie Two Rivers was the first one who knocked on the door of Joe Plonka's house. John Wabanascom was next, and I was behind John Wabanascom. When Joe Plonka opened the door and we moved into the house, he reached in his back pocket for a 2-shot Derringer in which John Wabanascom let go one round into the ceiling of his armor-piercing weapon, a 30-06 or a 30-08. And I was so afraid to look at where he shot because I thought he may have shot Mr. Palanca.
And it was New Year's Day, about 2 o'clock in the morning, when I got a phone call, and that they said that they had taken over the novitiate, and that they wanted me to come up there and help them negotiate to get it back, and that they had Mr. Plunkett, Joe Plunkett, our caretaker, and his family, and a guest of theirs as sort of hostages.
We held them in the kitchen area until they were able to get a hold of the Alexian Brothers leadership in Chicago and advise them of what was going on.
That they wanted me to come up there to Gresham, and they had this hostage, so I promised I would come up if you let Joe Plunkett and his family go home.
We released them. In fact, they got stuck in the snow and we helped push them out.
In one of Wisconsin's most miserable winters on record, the warriors, many accompanied by their wives and small children, settled in for the duration. The warriors' goal was transfer of ownership, and their battle cry was deed or death.
It was still dark when we left the cottage and went into the occupation area, the novitiate proper. We had already had cased the place to know what we wanted to do. Because we were predominantly all Vietnam veterans, we divided people into killer teams, fire teams, if you will, and we assigned them to various strategic locations with rifles, some of them with pistols. That first week was constant shooting and firefighting from the Lambrey's farm.
Local authorities replied by cutting off power to the monastery. Hostilities escalated, and the governor activated the National Guard.
And a lot of these guys were just itching for a firefight. They just loved it when the cops were there because we got to shoot at them every night. How people weren't killed, I'll never know.
FBI records and conversations with inside informants revealed the volatility of the occupation.
We found ourselves in a situation that nobody knew what to do, and nobody was coming out to support us, even the church, the Catholic Church.
The warriors succeeded in gaining attention from the international press, and celebrity flocked to support their cause.
And it was cold, and I remember Marlon Brando very solicitously brought a coat over and put it around my shoulders because I guess I was shivering or something from it was so cold in that room.
It was a little like Disneyland in the beginning.
The warriors negotiated with the Alexians in a designated no-man's land aboard a bus.
They said, well, what should we do? And I said, well, it'd be nice if you sent some food in there, I think, because, and they didn't know what to send. I said, why don't you send them a bushel of apples? I don't know what made me say that. And they said, oh, brother, that'd be the worst thing to send in because an apple is red on the outside, but it's white on the inside. They're going to be insulted at that.
We went out to negotiate out in the trailer, and they had liquor in the trailer, and we made them dump it out. Because we figured, oh, this old trick again, get the Indians drunk and get them to sign.
Talks drug on for weeks, but failed. This resulted in an escalation of the Guard presence and a tightening of the perimeter. Forced removal was looming. Because of the life-threatening impasse, the warriors were allowed to send their women and children out of harm's way. Armored personnel carriers and artillery were positioned. With a twist on an old theme, the cavalry took their wagons and circled the Indians. Fearing the worst, elders on the reservation began ceremonies and dances that traditionally preceded death. At the 11th hour, the Alexians responded to the warriors' cry of deed or death with one of their own, life and peace. Hoping to avoid another Kent state, the brothers agreed to deed the novitiate to the tribe for $1. Persistence and cool heads on all sides prevailed. Although the occupation ended with arrests, it was a moral victory for the warriors, so it appeared. Immediately following the takeover, repeated efforts were made to follow through with the agreement. Tribal politics and lack of funds to operate the facility forced the Menominee to abandon accepting the novitiate. Later that year, the mansion was gutted by fire. The brothers found another buyer. A quarter century has passed, and ill but mellowed feelings still exist. The Menominee are again a sovereign nation and restored to full tribal status. Economically, they appear to be back on track. The Alexians continue to operate their medical facilities. I am not a part of the brothers' recent history. Instead, I chose family and career. What I have learned has been cathartic, not only for me, but those now willing to speak again. The principals that are still living are making some sense of the history here. What I have shared with you now only scratches the surface. Over the years, countless schemes to find a use for the novitiate have fizzled. The current owner and resident, Frank Matuzny, attempted to make the monastery an historic attraction, but his own illness dashed his dream. Now, graffiti replaces its stained glass. The extremes this place has seen, and the hands it has passed through, is the substance of which novels are made. It seems the fate of the novitiate is that of a station for change, a depot for transition, but never the final destination. Perhaps it exists just to help people move on.